Hi everyone, γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're getting fancy around here and I'm going to teach you how to make Tourta Nougatina, which is a Greek cake that's sold throughout Greece in bakeries. You might have seen it. The sides are coated in almonds. It's basically 3 layers of an almond cake. The filling is a Bavarian, very creamy filling, and then it's iced with homemade whipped cream. Of course, lots of almonds on the side. It's so good. I'm going to teach you the easiest way to make it so you can make it next time for a special occasion. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by making the cake layers because you can make these up to a week ahead of time. They keep well in the freezer, so that makes life really nice and easy once this step is done. So begin by separating 6 eggs. I like to start with the egg whites, so I'm going to add all of the egg whites to my mixing bowl that's been fitted with the whisk attachment, and I'm going to begin mixing this on a medium speed. Once they get nice and frothy, I'm going to add half of the sugar to this. So half a cup of granulated sugar, I'm going to stream it in while I've increased the speed to a little bit higher now. And then I'm going to go full speed and let these whip up until a nice meringue has formed. This is what it should look like. It should be thick and pretty stiff because we're going to whisk these in later on to the egg yolks, and you don't want it to lose the volume. You want it to keep as much volume as you can. So transfer the meringue to another bowl unless you have 2 mixing bowls, and that's perfect. Then add the egg yolks to the mixing bowl along with the remaining sugar. So half a cup of granulated sugar, 1 or 2 tablespoons of light olive oil. This is going to make the cake nice and springy and moist. 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and 1 teaspoon of pure almond extract. We're going to start this off over low speed, and then I'm going to increase the speed to high and let this beat for about 3 to 5 minutes until it's nice and frothy and creamy. Now in this bowl over here, I have my dry ingredients. That's 2 cups or 200 grams of almond flour, half a cup of all-purpose flour, that's 75 grams, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and to make it nice and light, I added 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a little pinch, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Whisk that all up and the dry ingredients are ready. So once your egg yolks look like this, they're pale and thick and creamy, we're going to lighten these up with the meringue that we whipped up, the egg whites. So I'm going to add a little bit at a time and whisk it in until all of the meringues are in here and the mixture is really nice and light and fluffy. Then I'm going to add the flour mixture a little bit at a time. Each time the first batch is incorporated, I'm going to go in and add more. And once all of the flour is in there, it's ready to be transferred to the baking pans. So I have 3 8-inch round baking pans here that I've sprayed with baking spray. I've also lined them with parchment paper. And I love to distribute the batter using an ice cream scoop. I have this large ice cream scoop here. And I just do 1 scoop at a time until all the batter is in the cake pans. If you really want to, you can take out a digital scale and weigh these, but trust me, it's unnecessary. Smooth the batter out, and you can tap the pans a few times so everything is nice and even. And in the oven they go. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. These bake best on the center rack, and it's going to take about 15 to 18 minutes or so. The cakes are ready when they're nice and golden on top. They're springy when you touch them, and if you insert a toothpick into the center of the cake, it should come out clean or with a few crumbs attached. Run a knife around each cake to release it from the pan and then let it cool completely. Once the cakes have cooled completely, you can go ahead and just wrap them with plastic wrap, remove the parchment paper from the back and throw it away. And I would do 2 layers of plastic wrap so that way they don't absorb any freezer odors. Go ahead and transfer them to your freezer, and they thaw out really quickly once you're ready to use them. They take about 15 minutes at room temperature and they're ready. Just take care not to stack them on top of each other. These are light cakes and you want them to keep their shape. So next we're going to make the pastry cream, and I've made pastry cream so many times. For most of my cake recipes, I use pastry cream. It's just so good. I'm making much more than we're going to need because we love pastry cream, and if I make exactly how much is needed for the cake, I won't have anything left by the time everyone comes around and takes a bite or two. So in my saucepan over here, I have 4 cups or 1 liter of whole milk, and I'm going to add half of the sugar to this. We're going to be using 1.5 cups of sugar for the whole recipe, but I'll add 3/4 of a cup of sugar to the saucepan. This really keeps the milk from burning and sticking to the bottom of the pan. This is going to heat over medium heat while I prepare the rest of the ingredients. So in a pitcher over here, I have 6 egg yolks, half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and the remaining sugar, which is 3/4 of a cup of sugar. I'm also going to add half a cup or 80 grams of cornstarch and a little pinch of salt and whisk this all up until it's nice and smooth. By now, the milk should be really hot. While you're continuously mixing the egg yolk mixture, go ahead and stream in the steaming hot milk. This is going to raise the temperature of the egg yolks and keep them from scrambling once you add them back to the pot. So now we're going to add the egg mixture back into the pot, and we're going to cook this over medium heat until it begins to thicken. Make sure you're constantly whisking so that way nothing sticks to the bottom. And once it starts to come to a boil, you'll notice that it's going to begin to thicken. You want the pastry cream to get nice and thick, but keep in mind, as it cools, it is going to thicken up a little bit more. This is the consistency that you're looking for. Go ahead and take it off of the heat and stir in 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. Whisk that all up. And then I like to transfer it to a bowl so that way it can cool down. I pass it through a strainer just in case there are any little bits, hard bits that I've cooked down. You want to get rid of them so that way your pastry cream is nice and smooth. Cover it with a sheet of plastic wrap. It's going to keep a skin from forming at the top, and let this cool completely. Once it cools completely, it can be chilled in the refrigerator and it could be stored in there for 2 to 3 days. And when you're ready to use it, just take it out and everything again is going to be nice and simple and easy. Lastly, we're going to make the syrup. This is a simple syrup, and all good bakeries, the secret to their moist cakes is the syrup that they brush on top while they're decorating them. So we're going to add half a cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of water to the saucepan over here, and we're going to cook this until it comes to a boil, whisking it all together. Once the sugar has melted, we can go ahead and take it off of the heat and stir in half a teaspoon of almond extract, and the simple syrup can be transferred into a little jar and stored in your refrigerator for up to a week. So when you're ready to assemble the cake, that's when you're going to make the whipped cream. It's the only part of the cake that cannot be made ahead of time. You have to make it right when you need it, because I don't add any stabilizers to the whipped cream, so it deflates with time. So in my mixing bowl over here, I'm going to add 4 cups of heavy whipping cream. You want to make sure it's nice and cold. 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract and 1 teaspoon of pure almond extract. And then I'm going to add a cup of confectioner sugar. It's going to start off on a slow speed, whisking slowly, and then I'm going to increase the speed once everything is incorporated and it begins to thicken to a medium high. And once the cream is nice and thick and fluffy, just like we have it over here, it's ready. You want to really be careful when you're making whipped cream, because if you overmix it, it's going to start to separate and it'll start turning into butter, and you don't want that. This is the consistency you want. We're going to set that aside, and now we're going to put the cake together. So I also have this pastry bag over here that's fitted with this large open star tip. This is going to be used to decorate, and I also like to use it while I'm assembling the cake, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. I just use this glass to help me and put the pastry bag in there, fill it up halfway, and we're ready to go. So if you're going to be making cakes, or it's really easy to decorate them on these cardboards. These cake cardboards are sold in your local cake decorating shops. They're also on Amazon. I like to buy these either gold or silver ones because they're really easy to clean. The white cardboard ones, they do stain, so they're really made for when they're not going to show on a cake. So I like these gold ones. If you can get them, they're really good to use. I'm going to place 1 cake layer onto the center of the board, and I'm going to brush it generously with 1/3 of the syrup, focusing on the edges so they're nice and moist. Then using the whipped cream that we made, I'm going to pipe a ring all around the cake that keeps the filling from staying in the center. And I forgot to talk about the filling. So we made some Bavarian cream. We're going to fill this with a Bavarian cream, which is basically a combination of pastry cream and whipped cream. Whipped cream is used to really lighten up pastry cream because pastry cream is very dense, and I love it. If you like straight pastry cream, you don't even have to lighten this up. But if you want to make the classic European Bavarian cream, you're going to take some of your pastry cream, you can eyeball it and look at how much will fit on 2 layers. So that way you don't waste it. And then you can lighten it up with an equal amount of whipped cream. You don't need that much, but just a little bit. Whisk it all together to make the pastry cream nice and light, and then your Bavarian cream is ready. So fill your cake layer generously with the Bavarian cream, and then put the next layer of cake on top. You can press it down a little bit so that way everything is nice and stable and it stays together, and brush it with some more simple syrup. Put a ring of whipped cream around the edges, and then fill it with more of the Bavarian cream. Put the final layer on top, and then brush it with the remaining simple syrup that you have left over. over, focusing on the edges again so it stays nice and moist. And now we're gonna ice the cake. So I like to ice it with the whipped cream. The best way to do this is to put as much whipped cream as you can on the top of the cake, and using an offset spatula, go ahead and slide it down the sides and clean it up using the offset spatula too. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna get almonds on the side of this later on and it'll hide any imperfections. Go ahead and smooth out the sides and the top. And then I have sliced almonds here on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. I'm gonna take the cake and just hold it over the almond tray, and taking a handful of almonds at a time, I'll press them into the sides of the cake. And you could either clean up the ones that fell onto your cake board, or you can press them into the bottom of the cake. It's up to you. And lastly, I like to decorate this with whipped cream rosettes on top. So I'm just gonna pipe some rosettes between 8 to 10 on top of the cake. And then you can decorate the rosettes with either fresh berries. I have some sour cherry preserves here that I'm just going to carefully strain and put one on each rosette. And do keep in mind that if you are using sour cherry preserves with the syrup on them, it will stain your whipped cream, but it's okay. I think it looks pretty. It doesn't have to look perfect. I like to also clean as I go. I don't know about you guys, but I like to keep everything nice and clean. So keep a wet towel on hand and clean your area so that way you don't get crumbs all over the place. And then lastly, all you're going to do is take the cake and pop it in the freezer and chill it for about 30 minutes, or you could even do this overnight in your refrigerator. So there you have it. The cake looks beautiful. I cannot wait to cut into it. But before I do, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to make this a little bit ahead of time. I already talked about how you can make the cake layers ahead of time, the pastry cream, even the syrup. So literally all you need is a few minutes to put it together the day before or the day of when you're serving it. I prefer to make this either the morning of or the day before I'm serving it. The longer the cake sits, or not even the longer, you don't want it to sit too much because then the whipped cream starts to melt. But if you can make this the night before, the flavors are going to come together. The cake is going to have plenty of time to set, so when you slice it, it won't really fall apart. And it's just going to be delicious and very moist. You can also make this ahead of time. If you really want to make it well ahead of time and freeze it, you can do that. So decorate the whole cake, and if you have room in your freezer, you can put this in there and it'll stay fresh for about a month or so, but make sure not to decorate the top. Just ice it with the whipped cream, do one layer, don't put the almonds on it, and then right before you're ready to serve it, the day before, you can thaw it in the refrigerator and then ice it with some fresh whipped cream and decorate it on top and put whatever garnishes you want. If you're using the cherries like I am, do the cherry preserves or your favorite preserve. Really, whatever you want can go on top of this cake. And it can be frozen because whipped cream cakes freeze beautifully. We've frozen cakes at the bakery so many times and it just works. Just make sure to thaw it out well so you don't get a frozen cake, although it'll taste like ice cream cake if you freeze it and eat it like that. But it tastes best when it's thawed out. Time for the taste test. And it's so soft, you just slice right into it easily. So good, so creamy. You can really taste the almond in this because we have almond extract throughout all of the layers that we made. It's just so creamy and light and good. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. Make this for your next special occasion and let me know what you think. You can print this recipe out on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. If you have any other special cake requests, post them down below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes,